Police officer arrests black woman, but 7 minutes later he's unemployed. The handcuffs clicked around Diana Sullivan's wrists with a sound that Officer Connor Malone had heard 1,000 times before. Cold. Final. Satisfying. What he didn't hear was the timer that had just started counting down on his entire career. 7 minutes. That's all he had left. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, you've just clicked on a story that's about to turn everything you think you know about justice completely upside down. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments because this story? This one crosses every border, every boundary, every line you thought couldn't be crossed. How are you doing today? I hope you're ready, because what you're about to witness will leave you absolutely speechless. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. You're going to want to see how this ends. Trust me. Now, let's rewind to 7 minutes before Connor Malone's entire world collapsed. The gas station parking lot shimmered with heat, the Alabama sun turning the asphalt into a griddle at 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday that felt like any other Wednesday. Connor stood beside his patrol car, one hand resting on his belt, the other holding his radio, watching the black woman in the silver Mercedes with the kind of attention that made his partner nervous. Connor, maybe we should just, Officer Davis started. She rolled through that stop sign. Connor's jaw tightened. You saw it. It was barely. The law is the law, Davis. Connor Malone believed in the law the way some men believed in God, absolutely, without question, without mercy. 28 years old, 3 years on the force, and already he had more arrests than officers twice his age. His father had been a cop. His grandfather had been a cop. The badge wasn't just his job, it was his bloodline, his identity, his armor against a world that he divided neatly into two categories, those who followed the rules, and those who broke them. He approached the Mercedes, his reflection stretching across the tinted window before it lowered. Diana Sullivan looked up at him with eyes that held something Connor couldn't quite read. Not fear, he was used to seeing fear. Not anger, though he'd seen plenty of that too. This was something else. Something that made his skin prickle despite the heat. She was beautiful in a way that seemed almost deliberate, high cheekbones, natural hair pulled back in a sleek bun, a navy blue suit that probably cost more than his monthly salary. Her hands rested calmly on the steering wheel, a diamond ring catching the sunlight. Good afternoon, officer. Her voice was smooth, cultured, completely unruffled. Is there a problem? License and registration. She smiled, actually smiled, and reached for her purse with movements so slow and deliberate they bordered on theatrical. Of course. That smile bothered him. People didn't smile during traffic stops. They argued, they cried, they made excuses, they flirted, they threatened. But they didn't smile like they knew something he didn't. Do you know why I pulled you over, ma'am? I have a few theories. She handed him her documents. But I'd love to hear yours. Connor studied her driver's license. Diana Marie Sullivan, age 34, address in Mountain Brook, the wealthiest zip code in Alabama. He ran his thumb over the license edge, then looked back at her face, comparing. You rolled through the stop sign back there. Did I? She tilted her head slightly. How unfortunate. The way she said it, like she was discussing the weather, like this was all some mildly interesting inconvenience, made something hot and sharp twist in Connor's chest. He'd grown up in Bessemer, where stop signs were spray-painted with bullet holes and luxury cars didn't exist. He'd worked every day of his life to earn this badge, this authority, this respect. And she was sitting there in her Mercedes, dripping diamonds and condescension, smiling at him like he was a child playing dress-up. Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. Diana's smile didn't waver. Is that really necessary for a traffic violation, officer? She leaned forward slightly, reading his name tag. Malone? I said step out of the vehicle. Davis shifted uncomfortably behind him. Connor. Now, ma'am. For the first time, something flickered across Diana's face. Not fear, still not fear, but recognition. Like a chess player seeing the move her opponent was about to make. She unbuckled her seatbelt with that same deliberate grace and stepped out onto the scorching pavement in heels that clicked with authority. She was tall. Nearly his height. And when she looked at him, it was dead in the eyes, unflinching. "Is there something specific you're looking for, Officer Malone?" "I smell marijuana." It was a lie. They both knew it was a lie. The air smelled like gasoline and hot asphalt and nothing else. But Connor had learned early that probable cause was a tool, and tools existed to be used. Davis took a step forward. "Connor, I don't think." "Search the vehicle." Connor kept his eyes on Diana, waiting for the mask to crack, for the fear to finally show. Instead, she laughed. Actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that cut through the humid air like a blade. "Oh, Connor." She said his name like she'd known him for years. "You have no idea what you just did, do you? Turn around. Hands behind your back." "I'm not resisting." She turned, still smiling, still calm, and Connor felt that prickle again, stronger now, like standing on train tracks and feeling the vibration before you hear the engine. The handcuffs clicked into place. "You're under arrest for suspicion of possession of a controlled substance and obstruction of justice." "Obstruction?" Diana glanced over her shoulder at him. "I've complied with every single request." "You're being uncooperative." "I'm being calm." "There's a difference." She paused. "Though I suppose those might look the same to someone who's used to fear." Connor's hand tightened on her arm, not rough enough to bruise, but firm enough to remind her who was in control. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." "In about 6 minutes, Diana said quietly, "You're going to wish I had." Davis was searching the car now, pulling out a leather briefcase, a gym bag, a laptop case. His movements grew more frantic, more uncertain. Connor could see it in his partner's face, the growing realization that they weren't going to find anything. But it didn't matter. Connor had her in cuffs. He had probable cause. He had the law on his side. He always had the law on his side. "Connor." Davis emerged from the Mercedes, empty-handed and pale. "There's nothing here, man. We should let her go." "Book her for the traffic violation then." "For rolling through a stop sign?" "We never." "Today we do." Connor guided Diana toward the patrol car, one hand on her cuffed wrists, the other on her shoulder. She moved without resistance, without protest, with that same unsettling calm that had bothered him from the beginning. As he opened the back door of the cruiser, Diana turned her head slightly, and for just a moment, Connor saw something in her eyes that made his stomach drop. Pity. She pitied him. "Officer Malone," she said softly, "do you know who I am?" "I know you're under arrest." "My briefcase." "The black leather one your partner was holding. There's a business card in the front pocket. You might want to look at it." Connor's jaw clenched. "Get in the car." "For minutes now," Diana said, ducking into the back seat with a grace that seemed impossible with her hands cuffed behind her. "Maybe less." Davis jogged over, the briefcase still in his hands, his face flushed. "Connor, she's right. There's a card, and you need to see." "I don't need to see anything. We're taking her in." "Connor, she's..." But whatever Davis was about to say was cut off by the sound of Connor's phone ringing. Not his cell phone, his official department phone, the one that only rang for calls from the station. He answered. "Malone." The voice on the other end was Captain Morrison, and he sounded like a man watching a building burn. "Connor, what the hell did you just do?" Connor's hand tightened around the phone. Captain Morrison never called directly. Never called during a routine stop. Never sounded like the world was ending. "Sir, I made a lawful arrest. Do you have any idea who's sitting in the back of your cruiser right now?" Connor glanced at the patrol car where Diana sat, perfectly still, perfectly composed, watching him through the window with those same knowing eyes. A traffic violator who? That's Diana Sullivan, you goddamn idiot. Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. Federal Judge Diana Sullivan. Third Circuit Court of Appeals. She was nominated to the Supreme Court last month. The world tilted. Connor felt the heat drain from his face despite the Alabama sun beating down on him. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Behind him, Davis made a noise somewhere between a gasp and a groan. She's also, Morrison continued, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper, the keynote speaker at the National Police Reform Summit happening in Birmingham right now. The one the mayor is hosting. The one every news camera in the state is covering. She was driving from the airport to the convention center when you decided to play cowboy. Connor's eyes locked on Diana through the window. She smiled at him, the same calm, knowing smile she'd worn from the beginning, and mouthed 2 words, 3 minutes. Sir, I had probable cause. You had your head up your ass. Morrison's breathing was ragged. CNN has the story. So does MSNBC. Twitter is melting down. The mayor just called the chief, and the chief just called me, and I'm calling you to tell you that you need to uncuff Judge Sullivan, apologize like your life depends on it, because your career sure as hell does, and pray to God she doesn't sue the department into bankruptcy. The phone went dead. Connor stood frozen in the parking lot, the phone still pressed to his ear, his entire nervous system trying to process what had just happened. Around him, the world continued like nothing had changed. Cars pulled in for gas, someone laughed inside the convenience store, a radio played country music somewhere, but for Connor Malone, everything had stopped. Davis was already moving toward the patrol car, fumbling for his keys, his hands shaking so badly he dropped them twice. I tried to tell you, Davis whispered. Jesus Christ, Connor, I tried to tell you. Connor's legs carried him forward on autopilot. His hands, the same hands that had cuffed her with such certainty 8 minutes ago, now trembled as he reached for the door handle. Diana stepped out with the same unhurried grace she'd shown all along, turning her back to him so he could remove the handcuffs. As the metal clicked open, she rubbed her wrists slowly, deliberately, making sure he saw the red marks his arrest had left on her skin. Judge Sullivan, Connor's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. I apologize. There was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Diana turned to face him fully now, and the pity was gone from her eyes. What replaced it was worse, a cold, analytical assessment that made Connor feel like an insect under a microscope. Is that what we're calling it? I thought. You thought a black woman in an expensive car didn't belong in your jurisdiction. Her voice remained calm, but each word landed like a hammer. You thought you smelled marijuana in a car that smelled like leather and air conditioning. You thought you could manufacture probable cause because you've done it before and gotten away with it. That's not, but Connor's protest died in his throat because they both knew it was true. Diana picked up her purse from where Davis had set it on the hood of the cruiser, checked her phone, and let out a long breath. 2 minutes, Officer Malone. That's how long it took from when you put me in handcuffs to when this video went viral. She turned her phone toward him. Connor's stomach dropped through the asphalt. The screen showed a video, crystal clear, perfectly framed, of him cuffing Diana, his face hard and certain, her expression calm and compliant. The caption read, Federal Judge Diana Sullivan, Supreme Court nominee, arrested at traffic stop in Alabama. Full video in thread. 3 million views. And climbing. The young woman pumping gas over there? Diana gestured with her phone toward a college-aged girl who was now very deliberately not looking in their direction. She recognized me. Started filming the moment you approached my car. She's a law student at Alabama. I gave a lecture there last semester on civil rights and police accountability. Diana slipped her phone back into her purse. The irony is not lost on me. Connor felt like he was drowning in air. His throat constricted. His vision tunneled. Everything he'd worked for, every shift, every arrest, every commendation, the legacy his father and grandfather had built, all of it was circling the drain because of 8 minutes of certainty that had turned out to be catastrophically wrong. "I'll file a report," he managed. "Explain that it was a mistake." "A mistake." Diana's laugh was sharp. "Officer Malone, do you know how many people are going to see that video by the end of today? 10 million? 20 million? Do you know how many of them are going to be black parents who will show it to their children as evidence that no matter how far you go, how much you achieve, how perfectly you comply, you can still end up in handcuffs on a Wednesday afternoon because an officer decided you looked like you didn't belong?" Each word was a scalpel, precise and devastating. "I have 4 degrees, Diana continued, her voice soft now, which somehow made it worse. "Yale undergraduate. Harvard Law. I clerked for Justice Ginsburg. I've argued 12 cases before the Supreme Court and won 10. I've spent 20 years of my life fighting for justice, for reform, for the belief that the system could be better. And today, I became another statistic. Another hashtag. Another reason for my nephew to be afraid of police officers." Connor wanted to defend himself, to explain that he wasn't racist, that he came from a good family, that he believed in justice too. But the words felt hollow before they even reached his lips. Because standing there, looking at Diana Sullivan, at the red marks on her wrists, at the calm fury in her eyes, at the phone that was probably already ringing with calls from reporters and lawyers and political operatives, Connor realized something that made his chest tighten with shame. He'd never once considered that he might be wrong. Not when he approached the car. Not when he demanded she step out. Not when he put on the handcuffs. In every moment of that encounter, he'd been absolutely certain of his authority, his judgment, his rightness. And that certainty had just destroyed him. "Judge Sullivan." Davis stepped forward, his voice pleading. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have stopped him." Diana's expression softened slightly when she looked at Davis, the younger officer who'd questioned Connor's decisions, who'd tried to intervene. "You should have, Officer Davis. But we both know how that works, don't we? The culture of silence. The thin blue line. Speaking up means becoming an outcast in the only family that matters." She picked up her briefcase, checked her watch. "I'm now 40 minutes late for a summit on police reform where I'm supposed to give a speech about building bridges between law enforcement and communities of color. I was going to talk about progress, about hope, about the good officers who are trying to make a difference." Diana looked directly at Connor. "I think I'll tell them about you instead." She walked back to her Mercedes, her heels clicking against the pavement with sharp finality. Before she got in, she paused and turned back. "Officer Malone, I want you to understand something. I'm not going to sue you. I'm not going to press charges. I'm not going to demand your badge." For one brief, foolish moment, Connor felt a flutter of hope. "I don't have to," Diana continued. "You've already done all of that to yourself. The video speaks for itself. The investigation will follow. The consequences will come. And nothing I do or don't do will change what happens next." She slid into her car, started the engine, and drove away. This time, Connor noticed with a sick feeling, coming to a complete stop at the stop sign before pulling onto the main road. Davis's phone buzzed. Then Connor's. Then Davis's again. The sound of their world imploding in real-time notifications. Connor looked at his screen. 17 missed calls. 43 text messages. Emails flooding in faster than his phone could load them. The last text was from his father, a retired lieutenant who'd worn his badge like armor for 35 years. "Call me now." But before Connor could dial, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Then another. News vans, 2, 3, 4 of them, with satellite dishes and camera crews spilling out like an invading army. A reporter Connor recognized from the local NBC affiliate was already walking toward him, microphone in hand, cameraman in tow, the red recording light already glowing like a demon's eye. "Officer Malone. Can you comment on the arrest of Judge Diana Sullivan? Were you aware of who she was?" Do you believe racial profiling played a role in your decision to? The questions came like bullets, and Connor had no shield, no cover, nowhere to hide. Davis grabbed his arm. Don't say anything. Don't even look at them. We need to get back to the station. But as Connor turned toward the patrol car, he caught his reflection in the window, a young man in a uniform that suddenly felt like a costume, a badge that felt like a weight instead of wings, a face drained of all the certainty that had defined him since he was old enough to understand what his last name meant. Connor Malone had woken up this morning as a police officer with a proud legacy and a bright future. 13 minutes later, he was a viral video, a cautionary tale, and a symbol of everything wrong with American policing. And the worst part, the part that made his hands shake and his stomach churn as Davis pulled the cruiser out of the parking lot while reporters shouted questions and cameras tracked their movement, was that he still didn't fully understand what he'd done wrong. He'd followed his training. He'd enforced the law. He'd made a lawful arrest. Hadn't he? The question haunted him all the way back to the station, where Captain Morrison was waiting with an expression that promised Connor's day was about to get much, much worse. The Birmingham Police Department's Internal Affairs office smelled like stale coffee and career endings. Connor sat in a plastic chair that squeaked every time he breathed, facing 3 people who held his future in their hands. Captain Morrison stood against the wall, arms crossed, face carved from stone. Lieutenant Sarah Chen from Internal Affairs sat across from him, a laptop open, her fingers hovering over the keyboard like a court stenographer preparing for execution. And beside her, impossibly, sat the department's attorney, which meant this wasn't just an interview. It was a funeral. The video has been viewed 47 million times in the last 3 hours, Chen said, her voice clinical. It's the #1 trending topic on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. The governor has issued a statement. So has the NAACP. The ACLU is calling for an investigation. Judge Sullivan's office has received over 3,000 interview requests from media outlets. Chen turned her laptop toward Connor. The screen showed a split image, on the left, him cuffing Diana with a hard, certain expression, on the right, a photo of Diana in her judicial robes, standing in front of the Supreme Court building. The caption, "This is what racial profiling looks like." "I didn't," Connor started. "Stop talking." Morrison's voice could have stripped paint. "Lieutenant Chen, show him the rest." Chen clicked to another tab. This one showed Connor's personnel file, but highlighted sections Connor had never seen before. Complaint reports. Civilian grievances. All dismissed, all cleared, all buried in bureaucratic language that suddenly looked very different in the light of 47 million views. 11 traffic stops in the last year, Chen read. 9 of them involving black drivers. 7 of those searches resulted in no arrests, no citations, no findings. But you conducted searches anyway. I had probable cause. You had a pattern. Chen's eyes were ice. And now that pattern is on every news channel in America with Judge Diana Sullivan's face next to it. Connor's phone buzzed in his pocket. Again. It hadn't stopped buzzing since he'd walked into the station. Messages from his father. His mother. His academy classmates. Friends who were suddenly very quiet. Reporters who'd somehow gotten his personal number. And one message, received 7 minutes ago, that he'd been too afraid to open, sender, D. Sullivan. The chief is holding a press conference in 1 hour, Morrison said. He's going to announce your suspension pending a full investigation. Paid leave, but that won't last. The union lawyer says you're toxic. Nobody wants to touch this. Connor felt the walls closing in. Captain, I made a mistake. I'll apologize publicly, I'll do whatever. You think an apology fixes this? Morrison pushed off the wall, leaning over the table. You arrested a federal judge, Connor. A Supreme Court nominee. On camera. For a traffic violation that a dozen experts have already analyzed and said wasn't even a violation. You claimed probable cause for marijuana that didn't exist. You escalated a routine stop into a national incident. I didn't know who she was. That's the problem. Morrison's fist slammed the table. It shouldn't matter who she was. Every person you pull over deserves the same respect, the same benefit of doubt, the same basic human dignity. But you saw an expensive car, a black woman, and you decided she was guilty of something. Anything. So you went fishing. The truth of it hit Connor like a physical blow. He opened his mouth to argue, to defend himself, but the words died because Morrison was right. He had gone fishing. He'd done it before. Other officers did it. It was part of the culture, part of the unspoken understanding that you trusted your gut, you followed your instincts, you controlled the situation. Except his gut had been poisoned by assumptions he'd never examined. His instincts had been shaped by biases he'd never acknowledged. And now the whole world was watching. Here's what's going to happen, Chen said, her voice softer now, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. You're going to go home. You're going to stay off social media. You're not going to talk to reporters. You're going to wait for the investigation to conclude. And then, Officer Malone, you're going to find a new career. Lieutenant. This isn't negotiable. Chen closed her laptop. I've seen 100 cases like this. The video is too clear. The optics are too bad. The timing is catastrophic. Even if you did nothing technically illegal, and that's debatable, you're finished. The department can't survive keeping you. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. Morrison handed Connor a manila envelope. Your suspension paperwork. Turn in your weapon and badge before you leave. Connor's hand shook as he opened the envelope. The words blurred on the page. Suspension without prejudice, pending investigation, effective immediately. The badge came off his chest like he was removing his own skin. The weight of the gun leaving his hip felt like losing a limb. He set them on the table with movements that felt like someone else's, like he was watching this happen to a stranger. One more thing, Chen said as Connor stood to leave. Judge Sullivan's office called 20 minutes ago. Connor's blood turned to ice. She's pressing charges? No. Chen's expression was unreadable. She wants to meet with you. Privately. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. She's staying at the Renaissance Hotel downtown. The room went silent. Morrison's eyebrows shot up. She wants to what? Meet with Officer Malone. Face to face. No lawyers, no cameras, no recording devices. Just the two of them. Chen pulled out a printed email and slid it across the table. Her assistant sent this directly to the chief. The judge was very specific about the terms. Connor picked up the paper with numb fingers. The email was brief, formal, and utterly bewildering. Chief Williams. I would like to request a private meeting with Officer Connor Malone tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at my hotel. This is not a legal proceeding and no recording will be made. I simply wish to have a conversation. Officer Malone is free to decline, but I believe it would be in both our interests to speak. Respectfully. Judge Diana Sullivan. It's a trap, Morrison said immediately. She's going to record it, twist your words, use it against you in court. She's a federal judge, Chen countered. If she says no recording, there won't be one. Her word is literally law. Then why? Connor looked between them. Why would she want to meet with me? Nobody had an answer. Connor's phone buzzed again. He pulled it out, and this time he opened the message from D. Sullivan. Officer Malone, I meant what I said, I'm not suing you. But we need to talk. What happened today is bigger than both of us. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., if you're brave enough. DS. Brave enough. The word stung like a slap. Don't go, Morrison advised. Nothing good can come from this. She's playing an angle. Or, Chen said quietly, she's doing exactly what she's spent her career doing, trying to fix a broken system. Maybe she sees an opportunity in this disaster. Connor stared at the message. At the woman who'd smiled in the back of his cruiser while his career burned down around him. At the federal judge who'd pitted him even as he arrested her. At the person who'd just become the most famous face in America, who could destroy him with a single interview, a single lawsuit, a single tweet. And she wanted to talk. "I'll go," Connor heard himself say. "Connor," Morrison started. "I'll go," he repeated, stronger this time. "If there's even a chance to understand what happened today, to understand what I did, why I did it, what it means, I have to take it." Chen nodded slowly. "Then be at the Renaissance at 9 a.m. Suite 1407. Come alone." "And Officer Malone?" She met his eyes. "Listen more than you talk." Connor left the station through the back entrance, avoiding the cameras that had gathered out front like vultures. His personal truck sat in the parking lot where he'd left it this morning, back when he'd been Officer Connor Malone, third-generation cop, pride of the family, guardian of the law. Now he was just Connor. Unemployed. Viral. Infamous. He sat in the truck for a long time, holding the phone, reading Diana Sullivan's message over and over. "If you're brave enough." His father called. Connor let it go to voicemail. His mother called. Voicemail. Davis called. "Man, I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can," Connor hung up. Finally, with hands that had stopped shaking out of pure exhaustion, Connor typed a response. "I'll be there. Connor Malone." The reply came within seconds. "Good. This conversation will change your life. I hope you're ready. DS." Connor sat in the parking lot as the sun set over Birmingham, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, and wondered if it was possible for a life to change twice in the same day. Tomorrow morning, he'd find out. Tomorrow morning, he'd face Diana Sullivan without a badge, without authority, without the certainty that had defined him. Tomorrow morning, Connor Malone would have to decide who he was when he wasn't a cop. And somewhere in a hotel suite downtown, a federal judge was planning a conversation that would either redeem him or finish what that viral video had started. Connor didn't sleep. He spent the night in his apartment, watching his phone light up with notifications he didn't read, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of that traffic stop until the details blurred together into one continuous nightmare. At 3 a.m., he finally opened Twitter. That was a mistake. His name was everywhere. Hashtag Connor Malone was trending number 2, right below hashtag Judge Sullivan. Some tweets called for his arrest. Others defended him with a viciousness that made his skin crawl, people he'd never met weaponizing his mistake to score points in arguments that had nothing to do with what actually happened in that parking lot. But it was the quiet tweets that hurt most. The ones from black mothers saying, "This is why I'm terrified when my son drives." The ones from teenagers saying, "And they wonder why we don't trust police." The ones that didn't mention Connor at all, just shared the video with 3 words, "This." Every time. He'd become a symbol. And symbols weren't human. At 8:15 a.m., Connor stood in the lobby of the Renaissance Hotel wearing jeans and a button-down shirt that felt wrong without a uniform beneath it. He felt naked. Exposed. Every person who glanced his way seemed to recognize him, though rationally he knew that was impossible. The elevator ride to the 14th floor took forever and no time at all. Suite 1407. Connor raised his hand to knock, then paused. Behind this door was the woman who'd destroyed his career with her calmness, her composure, her damning perfection. Behind this door was a federal judge who'd spent 20 years fighting people like him, or at least, people like who he'd been yesterday. Behind this door was Diana Sullivan, and Connor had no idea what she wanted. He knocked. The door opened immediately, as if she'd been waiting on the other side. Diana stood in the doorway wearing black slacks and a cream silk blouse, her hair down this time, falling past her shoulders in natural curls that softened her features. Without the armor of her suit or judicial robes, she looked younger. More human. More terrifying, somehow. Officer Malone. She stepped aside. Thank you for coming. Just Connor. His voice came out rougher than intended. I'm not an officer anymore. That hasn't been decided yet. We both know how this ends. Diana's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Do we? Come in. The suite was elegant but not ostentatious, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Birmingham, a small sitting area with 2 chairs positioned facing each other, a coffee service already laid out. Diana had planned this. Choreographed it. Connor remained standing near the door. Judge Sullivan. Diana. She poured coffee into 2 cups. If you're just Connor, I'm just Diana. Cream? Sugar? Black. She handed him the cup, their fingers brushing for a fraction of a second. Connor noticed the red marks on her wrists were gone, were covered with makeup. He noticed the way she moved with that same deliberate grace, but in the privacy of this room, there was something else. A tiredness around her eyes. A tension in her shoulders. Diana Sullivan was exhausted. You look like hell, she said, settling into one of the chairs. Connor almost laughed. You're observant. It's part of the job. She gestured to the other chair. Sit. Please. You standing there like you're waiting for execution is making me nervous. He sat, though every instinct screamed at him to stay mobile, stay ready. Old training died hard. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The woman who'd been cuffed. The man who'd cuffed her. Separated by 3 feet of expensive carpet and an ocean of consequences. Why am I here? Connor asked finally. Because you came. Diana sipped her coffee. I wasn't sure you would. Most people in your position would lawyer up, hide out, wait for the storm to pass. I don't have a position anymore. Stop it. Her voice sharpened. Stop wallowing. You made a catastrophic mistake. You're facing consequences. But you're still here, which means some part of you wants to understand what happened. So let's understand it. Connor's jaw tightened. You want me to confess? Admit I'm a racist on some recording so you can. There's no recording. Diana set down her cup with deliberate care. I told you that. I'm a federal judge, Connor. My word means something, even if yours doesn't anymore. The barb landed. Connor flinched. Sorry. Diana closed her eyes briefly. That was cruel. I'm tired. I gave my speech yesterday. Do you know what I talked about? Police reform. Hope. Diana's laugh was bitter. I talked about hope. About bridge building. About the good officers who were trying to change the culture. I told a room full of activists and community leaders that progress was possible if we could just talk to each other, see each other as human beings instead of symbols. She stood, walked to the window, her back to Connor. And the whole time, all anyone wanted to ask about was you. The officer who arrested me for driving while black. The viral video that proved everything I was saying about hope was naive bullshit. Connor heard the crack in her voice. The anger, yes, but underneath it, disappointment. Grief. You cost me my credibility, Diana said quietly. I've spent my career telling people that the system can work, that change is happening, that there are good cops. And now, every time I say that, someone will pull up that video and ask me how it felt to be handcuffed by one of the good ones. The words hit Connor like punches. He'd been so focused on what he'd lost, his job, his reputation, his future, that he hadn't fully considered what he'd taken from her. I'm sorry, he said, and meant it. Diana turned, her eyes bright. Are you? Or are you sorry you got caught? Both. The honesty surprised him. I'm sorry I pulled you over. I'm sorry I escalated. I'm sorry the video went viral. But I'm also sorry that my whole life is imploding because I did what I've seen dozens of officers do 100 times without consequences. Finally. Diana returned to her chair, leaning forward. Finally, some truth. You're angry. Of course I'm angry. Connor stood, the coffee cup rattling as he set it down too hard. You want honesty? Fine. I don't think I'm a bad person. I don't think I'm a racist. I grew up with black friends, black neighbors. My partner is black. I became a cop because I wanted to help people, to make a difference. And yet, Diana said softly. And yet I saw you in that car and I made assumptions. Connor paced, the words spilling out now. I saw money and I thought drugs. I saw confidence and I thought suspicious. I saw a black woman who didn't show fear and I needed to put her in her place. The admission hung in the air like smoke. God. Connor sank back into the chair, his head in his hands. I needed to put you in your place. What the hell is wrong with me? You were trained, Diana said. Not just by the police academy. By every message you've ever received about who has power and who deserves it. By every movie where the cop is the hero and compliance is mandatory. By a system that's been broken for so long, we've started calling the breaks features. She leaned back, studying him. You're not a monster, Connor. You're a symptom. And that's somehow worse, because monsters we can identify and remove. Symptoms require treating the whole diseased system. Connor looked up at her. Why are you telling me this? Why bring me here? Because I need something from you. Diana's expression shifted, became calculating. And you need something from me. So I'm proposing a deal. Every alarm bell in Connor's head started ringing. What kind of deal? I'm writing a book, Diana said. About systemic racism in American policing. About implicit bias, about traffic stops as tools of oppression, about how good people participate in bad systems. My publisher wants it in 6 months. After yesterday, it's going to be a bestseller. She pulled out a tablet, brought up a document, handed it to Connor. I want you to be a primary source. I want to interview you, extensively, honestly, painfully. I want to understand how an officer who doesn't think he's racist can profile a federal judge. I want to document your training, your thought process, the culture that shaped you. Connor scrolled through the outline. Chapter titles jumped out at him, The Psychology of Probable Cause. Fear is Policy. When Officer Safety Means Black Danger. His story, dissected and displayed for the world. Absolutely not. Hear me out. You want to use me as your villain. Your case study in everything wrong with policing. You want to put my mistake under a microscope and publish it as a cautionary tale. Yes, Diana said simply. Because it is a cautionary tale. But Connor, this is also your only path to redemption. That stopped him. How? Right now, you're a headline. A faceless symbol of police brutality. In a month, when the investigation concludes and you're fired, you'll disappear. Some podcast will do an episode about you. Some think piece will mention your name. But you'll never get to explain, to grow, to show people that change is possible. Diana stood, her eyes intense. Work with me. Let me document your journey from the officer who profiled a judge to the man who understands why that was wrong. Let me show what real accountability looks like, what real change looks like. And in exchange, I'll write you a recommendation for every social justice organization in the country. I'll help you rebuild your life in a way that actually means something. You want me to publicly humiliate myself. I want you to publicly evolve. Diana moved closer. I want you to be brave enough to look at your own biases, your own mistakes, and grow from them. How many officers get that chance? How many just disappear into bitterness and Fox News comment sections? Connor looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who'd stayed calm while being arrested, who'd pitted him while her wrists were cuffed, who'd spent a sleepless night giving a speech about hope while being asked about her own trauma. She was brilliant. Strategic. Ruthless. And she was offering him a lifeline disguised as a grenade. If I say yes, Connor said slowly, nothing is off limits? You'll ask about everything? Everything. My family. My training. My other stops. Every mistake I've ever made. Yes. And you'll publish it all. Make me the face of systemic racism. I'll make you the face of accountability, Diana corrected. There's a difference. Connor walked to the window, looking out over the city where his family had worn badges for 3 generations. Where his reputation was already destroyed. Where his future had evaporated in 8 minutes of certainty. He had nothing left to lose. And maybe, just maybe, something to gain. One condition, he said, turning back to Diana. You don't just write about me. You write about you too. About what it felt like in that parking lot. About the fear you must have felt, even if you didn't show it. About what it costs to stay calm when someone with a gun and a badge is treating you like a criminal. Diana's expression flickered, surprise, then something like respect. You want me to be vulnerable too. If I'm going to bleed on the page, you should too. Make it a conversation, not a prosecution. Show people both sides of that encounter, what I was thinking, what you were feeling. Make us both human. Diana extended her hand. Deal. Connor looked at her hand for a long moment. Shaking it would change everything. Would commit him to a path he couldn't see the end of. Would tie his future to this woman who'd already destroyed his past. He shook her hand. Her grip was firm, her palm warm. They stood there for a moment, hands clasped, 2 people on opposite sides of a viral video now bound together by consequences and coffee and the desperate hope that something good could come from something terrible. When do we start? Connor asked. Diana smiled, a real smile this time, not the knowing one from the parking lot. Right now. Tell me about the first time you realized you were afraid of black people. Connor's hand dropped. I'm not. Connor. Diana's eyes were gentle but unyielding. We shook on honesty. So let's be honest. When was the first time? And sitting there in a hotel suite while his phone buzzed with notifications about his own downfall, Connor Malone began the hardest conversation of his life. He began to tell the truth. 3 weeks into their interviews, Connor thought he knew Diana Sullivan. He was wrong. They'd met 17 times, sometimes at the hotel, sometimes at coffee shops where people recognized them and whispered, sometimes at Diana's temporary office at the federal courthouse. Each session peeled back another layer of Connor's life, his training, his assumptions. Diana recorded everything, took meticulous notes, asked questions that felt like surgery. But she never talked about herself. Not really. Until today. Connor arrived at the hotel suite to find Diana standing at the window, her posture rigid in a way he'd never seen before. No coffee was prepared. No tablet ready. She didn't turn when he entered. We need to talk, she said. Off the record. Connor's stomach tightened. What happened? Close the door. He did. Diana finally turned, and Connor saw something in her face that shocked him, shame. I lied to you, Diana said quietly. Not about the book. Not about wanting accountability. But about why I'm really doing this. I don't understand. Sit down, Connor. He sat. Diana remained standing, her arms wrapped around herself like armor. 16 years ago, I was a prosecutor in Atlanta. Young, ambitious, absolutely certain I was one of the good ones. Her voice was hollow. A case came across my desk, young black man accused of armed robbery. The evidence was thin. Eyewitness ID from a gas station clerk who admitted the lighting was bad. No weapon recovered. No forensics. Connor's chest tightened. He knew where this was going. But there was a confession, Diana continued. Obtained during a 12-hour interrogation. The detective assured me it was clean, voluntary. And I wanted the win. I wanted the conviction rate. So I prosecuted that case like my career depended on it. Diana. His name was Marcus. Her voice cracked on the name. Marcus Chen. 23 years old. He kept saying he was innocent, that the police had threatened him, that he'd only confessed because they said he could go home if he just admitted it. But I didn't listen. I painted him as a predator. I asked for the maximum sentence. She closed her eyes. He got 15 years. The silence in the room was suffocating. 3 months ago, right before my Supreme Court nomination was announced, Marcus Chen was exonerated. DNA evidence from a cold case matched a different suspect, a man who'd committed 4 similar robberies. Marcus had served 16 years for a crime he didn't commit. 16 years because I didn't ask enough questions. Because I trusted a system that was broken. Because I was so sure I was right. Diana finally looked at Connor, tears streaming down her face. So when you say you're not a bad person who made a mistake, I understand. Because I wasn't a bad person either. I was a prosecutor who believed in justice. And I still destroyed an innocent man's life. Connor stood slowly, his mind reeling. Does anyone know? Marcus knows. My publisher knows, it's going to be chapter 1 of the book. The prosecutor who learned too late. But the media doesn't know yet. They still think I'm the perfect victim, the flawless judge who got profiled. They don't know I'm writing this book because I need redemption as much as you do. She wiped her eyes roughly. I wanted to tell you 3 weeks ago. But I was afraid you'd walk away, or use it against me, or... Connor crossed the room and pulled her into a hug. Diana went rigid with shock, then slowly, carefully, let herself lean into him. Her shoulders shook. Connor held her, this woman who'd seemed untouchable, now falling apart in his arms because she'd carried her own guilt for 16 years. I met with Marcus last month, Diana whispered against Connor's shoulder. I apologized. I offered him money, connections, anything I could do to help rebuild his life. You know what he said? What? He said, I forgive you, but forgiving yourself is your problem, not mine. Diana pulled back, looking up at Connor. That's when I knew I had to write this book. Had to face what I did. Had to show people that the system breaks everyone, victims, perpetrators, and the people who think they're heroes. Connor's hands were still on her shoulders. They were standing close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, close enough to feel her breath. You're not doing this just to expose me, he said slowly. You're doing this to expose yourself. We're exposing the system, Diana corrected. Together. The cop who profiled a judge and the prosecutor who convicted an innocent man. 2 people who thought they were doing the right thing and destroyed lives instead. Something shifted in that moment. The dynamic between them, antagonist and victim, judge and defendant, powerful and powerless, cracked open to reveal something more complicated. More human. 2 broken people trying to fix what they'd broken. There's something else, Diana said, stepping back, creating distance. Marcus Chen's case? The detective who obtained that confession? Connor's blood ran cold. Don't. Lieutenant William Malone. Your father. The room tilted. That's impossible, Connor managed. My father would never. The interrogation was ruled legal. No formal complaints filed. But Marcus described the tactics in detail, hours without food or water, threats about what happens to black men in prison, promises that cooperation meant going home. Diana's voice was gentle but relentless. Your father was a good cop by the system's standards. He got confessions. He closed cases. Just like you made arrests. Connor sank back into the chair, his mind fragmenting. His father, Lieutenant William Malone, the man who'd taught him to respect the badge, to uphold the law, to be certain in his convictions, had extracted a false confession that sent an innocent man to prison for 16 years. And Diana had prosecuted it. And now they were here, bound together by mistakes and consequences and a viral video that had revealed a connection neither of them had known existed. Did you know? Connor asked. When I pulled you over, did you know who my father was? No. I didn't make the connection until last week when I was reviewing Marcus's case file for the book. I saw your father's name and I couldn't breathe. Diana sat across from him. I thought about canceling everything. Walking away. But then I realized this is exactly why we need to tell this story. Because it's all connected. The culture that taught your father to extract confessions taught you to manufacture probable cause. And it taught me to trust authority over truth. Connor looked at this woman who'd become so much more than the person he'd arrested. She was brilliant and flawed and carrying guilt that matched his own. She was vulnerable and strategic and impossibly brave. And somewhere in the last 3 weeks, he'd started to care about her in a way that had nothing to do with redemption or books or viral videos. What do we do now? He asked. Diana reached across the space between them and took his hand. We tell the whole truth. Your story, my story, your father's story, Marcus's story. We show people that this isn't about good people and bad people, it's about a system that turns good people into agents of injustice. Her hand was warm in his. Steady. And after the book? Connor's voice was rough. After we bled on every page and exposed every mistake? I don't know, Diana admitted. Maybe we both rebuild. Maybe we both find a way to live with what we've done. Maybe. She didn't finish, but Connor saw it in her eyes. The same impossible thing he was feeling. Maybe they'd rebuild together. My father is going to hate this, Connor said. The department is going to hate this. Your nomination is going to be destroyed. I withdrew my nomination yesterday, Diana said simply. I can't serve on the Supreme Court while hiding what I did to Marcus. And I can't move forward without facing it. Connor's phone buzzed. A text from his father, we need to talk. Now. Diana saw it. He knows you're meeting with me. Probably thinks I'm making everything worse. Are you? Diana's eyes searched his. Having second thoughts? Connor thought about his father, about the legacy he'd worshipped, about the certainty he'd built his life on. All of it crumbling to reveal a foundation of bias and broken systems and good intentions that paved a road to Marcus Chen's 16-year hell. Then he looked at Diana, at the woman who'd stayed calm while being arrested because she understood the system better than he ever would. At the prosecutor who'd spent 16 years carrying guilt. At the judge who'd sacrificed a Supreme Court seat to tell the truth. No second thoughts, Connor said, squeezing her hand. Let's burn it all down and see what grows. Diana smiled, sad and hopeful and absolutely beautiful. Outside, storm clouds gathered over Birmingham. Inside, two people who'd destroyed each other's lives were becoming something neither expected. Partners. Allies. And maybe, eventually, something more. Connor's father stood in the parking lot of the Renaissance Hotel like a statue carved from disappointment. Lieutenant William Malone, retired, still carried himself like he owned every space he entered. Squared shoulders. Jaw like granite. Eyes that could cut through excuses. Get in the truck, William said. Not a request. Connor glanced back at the hotel. Diana was up there, probably watching from the window. 3 weeks of interviews. 3 weeks of trust being built between two people the world expected to hate each other. Dad, I can explain. Now, Connor. They drove in silence to a diner on the outskirts of town, the same place William had taken Connor after his first arrest, his police academy graduation, every major moment in his life as an officer. The booth in the back corner was empty, waiting like it always had been. William ordered coffee. Connor ordered nothing. His stomach was a knot. You're working with her, William said finally. The woman who's trying to destroy everything we've built. She's not. Don't. William's fist hit the table. I know about the book, Connor. I know she's digging into the Chen case. I know she's using you to tear apart this department, this family, everything your grandfather and I spent our lives building. Connor's throat tightened. Marcus Chen was innocent. Marcus Chen confessed. After 12 hours of interrogation. After you threatened him. After you promised. I did my job. William's voice cracked like a whip. I got a dangerous criminal off the streets. The fact that some DNA evidence surfaced 16 years later doesn't change what he admitted to. Dad, he didn't do it. He confessed. Because you broke him. Connor leaned forward, his voice shaking. You used the same tactics that were used on me. Fear. Exhaustion. Manipulation. You made him so desperate to escape that interrogation room, he would have admitted to anything. William's face went pale, then red. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Diana showed me the file. I read Marcus's description of that interrogation. And Dad, it sounded like training. It sounded like everything you taught me about controlling a situation, about breaking down resistance, about making them submit. That's police work, Connor. That's what we do. It's torture dressed up as justice. Connor's voice rose. People in the diner turned to look. He lowered his voice. We destroyed an innocent man's life because we were so certain we were right. You and Diana both. And when I arrested her, I was following the same playbook. The same certainty. The same need to control. William stood abruptly. You want to throw away your family for this woman? This judge who's using you for her book, for her redemption tour? She doesn't care about you, Connor. You're a chapter. A case study. The moment she's done with you, you'll be alone. Maybe I deserve to be alone. Don't be stupid. I profiled a federal judge, Dad. I arrested her because she was black and confident and didn't show me the fear I expected. And I learned that from you. From watching you, from listening to your stories, from absorbing every lesson about who deserves respect and who deserves suspicion. William's hand trembled as he threw money on the table. If you publish that book, if you side with her against this department, against our family, you're dead to me. You understand? I won't have a son anymore. The words landed like bullets. Connor stood, facing his father across the worn diner table. Then I guess you don't have a son. William walked out without looking back. Connor sat down heavily, his hands shaking, his chest tight. His phone buzzed. A text from Diana, you okay? He started to respond, then saw the notification above it. News alert. Breaking, Supreme Court nominee Diana Sullivan withdrew due to relationship with disgraced officer Connor Malone, sources say. His blood turned to ice. He clicked the article. Federal Judge Diana Sullivan's sudden withdrawal from Supreme Court consideration may have less to do with her role in the wrongful conviction of Marcus Chen and more to do with an inappropriate relationship developing between Sullivan and Connor Malone, the officer who arrested her in the viral traffic stop. The article included photos. Connor and Diana at coffee shops. Entering and leaving the hotel together. The hug from this morning, captured through the window by a telephoto lens, cropped and angled to look intimate. Romantic. Scandalous. Sources close to the judge suggest Sullivan has been meeting privately with Malone for weeks, raising questions about her judgment and the true nature of their collaboration. Connor's phone rang. Diana. Don't believe, she started. I know it's not true, but Diana, the photos. I know. Her voice was tight. My publisher just called. They're putting the book on hold pending an ethics investigation. My colleagues at the federal courthouse are demanding I recuse myself from all cases involving police defendants. Connor, they're saying I've been compromised. That I'm romantically involved with you to manipulate the narrative. Who would leak this? Does it matter? Diana's laugh was hollow. The damage is done. Our credibility is destroyed. Everything we've been working on, the interviews, the honesty, the attempt to show real accountability, it all looks like a cover story for some twisted affair. Connor's other line beeped. His mother. Then his academy roommate. Then a number he didn't recognize, probably a reporter. We need to release a statement, Connor said. Clarify that this is professional. It won't matter. You know it won't matter. Diana's voice broke. Connor, I think we need to stop. The meetings, the book, all of it. This is making everything worse. Diana, no. I've already cost you your career. Now I'm costing you your family. And this scandal is going to destroy any chance either of us has at redemption. Maybe we were wrong to think we could fix this together. Don't do this. I'm sorry, Connor. I really am. But I think we both need to face the consequences of our mistakes alone. Like we should have from the beginning. The line went dead. Connor sat in the diner booth, his phone dark in his hand, the world collapsing around him. No job. No father. No Diana. No redemption. Just viral infamy, manufactured scandal, and the growing certainty that everyone who'd warned him about Diana had been right. She'd used him. Gotten what she needed. And now she was walking away before the fire consumed her too. Outside, rain began to fall on Birmingham, and Connor Malone had never felt more alone. Connor sat in that diner booth for 2 hours, staring at his phone, replaying Diana's words until they lost all meaning. The rain pounded against the windows like accusations. Then he opened the article again. Really read it this time. Sources close to the judge suggest. Who was close to Diana? Who would benefit from destroying their credibility? Connor scrolled through the photos. The coffee shop, taken from across the street. The hotel entrance, shot from a parked car. The hug through the window, that required access to a building directly across from Diana's suite. Professional surveillance. Coordinated. Expensive. His phone buzzed. A text from Davis, his former partner. Man, I'm sorry about the article. For what it's worth, I don't believe it. You're not that stupid. Connor almost smiled. Then he noticed the timestamp on Davis's previous message, from 3 days ago, one Connor had ignored. Heads up. Lieutenant Chen from IA has been asking about you. Wanted to know who you've been meeting with. Seemed really interested in Judge Sullivan. Lieutenant Chen. Internal Affairs. The same Lieutenant Chen who'd interviewed him after the arrest. Who'd told him he was finished. Who'd made it clear the department couldn't survive keeping him. Connor's mind raced. If the department wanted to bury the story, to make sure Connor and Diana's book never saw daylight, what better way than to destroy their credibility? Make it look like a scandal instead of accountability? He called Diana. Voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He texted, it was the department. They're trying to silence us. Please call me. No response. Connor threw money on the table and ran to his truck. The drive to the Renaissance took 12 minutes that felt like hours. He parked illegally, ran through the lobby, ignored the desk clerk's protests. Suite 1407. He pounded on the door. Diana. I know you're in there. Please. Just listen to me. Silence. I know you think you're protecting me by walking away. But this is exactly what they want. They're scared of what we're doing, of what we're exposing. So they're trying to divide us. The door opened. Diana stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, her eyes red, her hair pulled back. She looked exhausted and beautiful and absolutely done. Connor, go home. Not until you hear me out. He pulled out his phone, showed her the timestamps, the pattern of surveillance. Look at this. Professional photos. Coordinated leaks. Someone with resources did this. And the only people who benefit from stopping our book are the ones it exposes. Diana studied the phone, her expression shifting from resignation to focus. The judge emerging through the grief. Lieutenant Chen, she said quietly. She's been with Internal Affairs for 15 years. She's buried dozens of complaints, protected hundreds of officers. And if our book comes out, it exposes the whole system. Not just me, not just my father, but everyone who's been covering for bad cops for decades. Diana looked up at him. They're going to keep coming. More leaks, more photos, more lies. They'll destroy both of us before they let this book see daylight. Then we don't give them time. Connor stepped into the suite, his mind racing with the clarity that came from having nothing left to lose. We release it now. Not as a book, as a statement. A joint press conference. We tell everything. Your story, Marcus Chen, my father, all of it. Before they can spin it, before they can control the narrative. Connor, that's career suicide. I don't have a career. His voice echoed in the suite. Neither do you, not anymore. They've made sure of that. So what do we have left except the truth? Diana paced, her legal mind working through scenarios. A press conference means no editorial oversight. No fact-checking. If we get one detail wrong, they'll use it to discredit everything. So we don't get anything wrong. Connor grabbed her laptop from the desk. You're the best legal mind in the country. I'm a cop who knows exactly how the system works. We have 3 weeks of recorded interviews. We have Marcus Chen's case file. We have proof. We have a scandal that makes us look like we're in a relationship. Connor stopped, met her eyes. Maybe that's not the worst thing they could accuse us of. The air between them changed. Charged. What are you saying? Diana's voice was barely a whisper. I'm saying that 3 weeks ago, you were the woman who destroyed my career. Now you're the person I trust most in the world. I'm saying that every assumption I had about you was wrong, and learning that has been the most important education of my life. Connor took a step closer. I'm saying that if they're going to accuse us of caring about each other, maybe they're not entirely wrong. Diana's breath caught. Connor. I'm not asking for anything, he continued quickly. I know the timing is impossible. I know we're in the middle of a war. But after everything we've been through, I'm not going to lie about this too. You matter to me. What we're doing together matters to me. And I'm not walking away. For a long moment, Diana just looked at him. Then she crossed the distance between them and kissed him. It was brief, fierce, and tasted like coffee and defiance and 3 weeks of tension finally breaking. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. Okay, she said. Let's burn it all down. They worked through the night. Connor called Marcus Chen, Diana's phone on speaker, and asked if he'd be willing to stand with them at a press conference. Marcus said yes without hesitation. Diana called her publisher, told them to prepare for a media firestorm. Then she called every reporter who'd requested an interview and told them to be at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute tomorrow at 2 p.m. By dawn, they had a statement. 20 pages of truth, citations, and testimony that would implicate dozens of officers, expose systemic corruption, and end any remaining fragments of their reputations. Connor looked at Diana across the desk, her hair falling loose from its tie, exhaustion and determination warring on her face. Last chance to back out, he said. Diana smiled, the same smile from the parking lot, but different now. Knowing and fierce and his. I don't back out, Connor. I thought you'd learned that by now. He had. God help him, he had. The Birmingham Civil Rights Institute was packed. Every major news outlet. Community activists. Police union representatives who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. And in the front row, Marcus Chen sat with quiet dignity, his presence alone an indictment. Connor stood backstage with Diana, his hands shaking. Through the curtain gap, he could see his father in the back, arms crossed, face carved from stone. He came, Connor whispered. Diana squeezed his hand. Then let's give him something to hear. They walked out together. The camera flashes were blinding. Diana spoke first. Her voice was steady, unflinching. She told the story of Marcus Chen, of her ambition, her certainty, her complicity in his wrongful conviction. She named Lieutenant William Malone and described the interrogation tactics that extracted a false confession. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Connor saw his father start to leave. Wait. Connor's voice cut through the chaos. Lieutenant Malone, please. Stay. William stopped at the door. Connor stepped to the microphone. 3 weeks ago, I arrested Judge Sullivan because I saw a black woman in an expensive car and assumed she was guilty of something. I manufactured probable cause. I escalated unnecessarily. I did exactly what I was trained to do by a system that taught me suspicion was the same as safety. He looked directly at his father. I learned that from the best. From a man who closed cases and got confessions and never questioned whether the person in that interrogation room might be telling the truth. Dad, you taught me to be certain. To trust the badge. To believe we were always the good guys. William's jaw clenched. But we weren't, Connor continued, his voice breaking. We were part of a machine that chews up innocent people and calls it justice. And the only way to stop being part of that machine is to acknowledge it exists. To face what we've done. To change. Marcus Chin stood, walked to the microphone. The room went silent. Lieutenant Malone stole 16 years of my life, Marcus said quietly. Prosecutor Sullivan sent me to prison. But today, they're trying to give me something back, the truth. They can't return what they took. But they can make sure it doesn't happen to someone else. He turned to Connor and Diana. That's what accountability looks like. Not revenge. Growth. The press conference lasted 2 hours. Questions flew like bullets. Diana and Connor answered every single one with documented proof, recorded testimonies, and unflinching honesty. When it ended, Connor found his father outside. I'm sorry, Connor said. For what it's worth. William looked at him for a long moment. You just ended my legacy. No, Dad. I just told the truth about it. What you do with that truth is up to you. William walked away. But halfway to his car, he stopped, shoulders sagging, and Connor knew, eventually, maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually, they'd find a way back to each other. Diana appeared at his side, her hand finding his. We did it, she said. We survived it, Connor corrected. What happens now? Diana smiled. Now we rebuild. Together. 6 months later. The book launched to a firestorm. Badges and Bias, A Judge and a Cop Confront Justice hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and stayed there for 14 weeks. But more than sales, it sparked something Connor and Diana hadn't expected, conversation. Police departments from Seattle to Miami requested them as speakers. Academies rewrote training protocols. Officers reached out privately, admitting their own moments of bias, their own Marcus Chens. The system didn't change overnight. But it shifted. And that shift started with 2 people brave enough to face their worst mistakes in public. Connor stood in front of a community center in Atlanta, teaching a de-escalation workshop to rookie officers. No badge, no uniform, but for the first time since that parking lot, he felt like he was actually serving people. Diana watched from the back row, pride radiating from her smile. After the session, they drove to Marcus Chen's new restaurant, a small soul food place he'd opened with money from his wrongful conviction settlement. Marcus greeted them with hugs and seated them at their usual table. You two made the news again, Marcus said, pouring sweet tea. Something about a police reform bill citing your book? Senator Harris mentioned it, Diana confirmed. Doesn't mean it'll pass, but it's progress, Connor finished. They did that now, completed each other's thoughts like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. Marcus grinned. You know what I like most about you two? You stopped apologizing and started fixing. That's the difference. After dinner, Connor and Diana walked through downtown Atlanta, hands intertwined, no cameras following, no scandal brewing. Just 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their certainties. I talked to my dad yesterday, Connor said quietly. Diana looked up at him. And? He's trying. Reading the book. Going to therapy. He asked if he could meet you someday. Connor squeezed her hand. I told him you'd consider it. I will. Diana stopped walking, turned to face him. Connor, do you ever regret it? The press conference, the book, everything we gave up? Connor thought about his badge, his family legacy, the career he'd planned since childhood. Then he looked at Diana, this brilliant, flawed, fearless woman who'd shown him that certainty was the enemy of truth. Not for a second, he said, and kissed her under the Atlanta streetlights. His phone buzzed. A text from Davis, new recruit class just spent 2 hours discussing your book. Times are changing, brother. Proud of you. Diana's phone buzzed too. Marcus, forgot to tell you, running into Judge Reynolds tomorrow. She said your book changed how she views police testimony. Said she wishes she'd had your courage years ago. They stood there on the sidewalk, reading messages from a world slowly, painfully, beautifully learning the lessons they'd bled to teach. We did it, Diana whispered. We're doing it, Connor corrected. This is just the beginning. And it was. Not redemption, that was too clean, too final. But something better. Growth. Accountability. Two people who'd been symbols of everything broken in the justice system becoming architects of something better. The viral video still existed. 47 million views and counting. But now when people watched it, they also watched the press conference. Read the book. Saw the whole story instead of just the 8 minutes that changed everything. Connor Malone would never be a police officer again. Diana Sullivan would never sit on the Supreme Court. But together, they were changing the system that had broken them both. And that, Connor thought as Diana pulled him toward their car, laughing about something Marcus had said, was worth more than any badge or bench. They drove into the Atlanta night, two people who'd arrested and been arrested, who'd destroyed and been destroyed, who'd found each other in the aftermath and built something real from the ruins. Behind them, the past with all its mistakes and certainties. Ahead of them, a future they were writing together. One truth at a time. The end. What did you think of Connor and Diana's journey? Have you ever had to confront your own biases? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing from you. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we're just getting started. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.